Hi, welcome to the Day Palmer Show. And today I have with me someone who's helping entrepreneurs, CEOs, go-getters, and adventurers identify and rewrite the stories that are holding them back. His life's work, including his book, Change Your Story, Change Your Life, has been about helping people get there. Rich Curtis, welcome to the Day Palmer Show.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here today.
Great pleasure for you to be here as well, Rich. So, Rich, why did you choose to write a book about connection between story and happiness?
Well, I think I didn't set out to be a self-help author in any way.
No.
But we all take hits in life, and my mom died suddenly and unexpectedly in 2013.
Yeah.
And after I took that hit, I lost all happiness. I lost all emotional resilience, and really for about 2 years was really suffering in the depths of depression, frustration, anger. Just wasn't bouncing back, which is something I hadn't previously experienced in my life. Certainly I'd had trouble and turmoil, but had never to the extent that I just couldn't bounce back. I wasn't getting there. I wasn't getting back from it. And it was, I had this epiphany, and I think some people have their epiphanies sort of, on the slopes of the Andes under the stars, taking ayahuasca or with their spiritual leader. But mine was a little less grandiose than that. I was circling the Costco parking lot, actually having an argument with my brother over the phone. So I'm driving circles around Costco, screaming into the phone at my brother. And I finally screamed, "Look, I'm failing Ann. That's my wife. I'm failing you. And we failed Mom. We just stood there and watched her die."
Right.
And when that story flew out of my mouth, I was just brought to a complete stop. In fact, I hit the brakes on the truck. I didn't know there's a security guard chasing me. He almost rear-ended me in his little golf cart.
Oh, yeah.
Because someone had apparently called in a crazy guy circling Costco, yelling into his phone.
Yeah. Right.
And I was just stunned that story was inside me. In the 2 years after my mom's death, no one had ever said anything about us failing my mom. I had never said that out loud. I'd never engaged with that idea or those feelings or that story once. And once it flew out of my mouth, I knew instantly that's what was holding me back. That's what was causing me all this pain. It was that story. Yeah. And then I had to stop and ask myself, a couple of important questions about that story. One was, is it true? And it turns out it wasn't. And the other one was, even if it's true, is it serving me? Is it taking me where I want to go? Is it doing good things in my life? And the answer was also, no, it's absolutely killing me. And so I looked at that day and said, well, what else is true about that day? If this story isn't the truth or the 100% truth, then what is the truth? And the truth is, my mom had a do not resuscitate order, a DNR, which basically means if we know this is only going one way, then you got to stop working on me and let it go.
Okay. Yeah.
So that meant we had to sit there on our hands and watch her die. That was that part of the story was true. We did just stand there and watch her die, but that's because that's what she wanted. So the act of standing there and watching her die was actually respecting her right to die her way.
Right.
That was particularly hard for me because my background before being a real estate entrepreneur and before being a coach, I worked in the outdoor industry. I was a raft guide and a mountain guide, right? So I sort of had all these wrong-headed, nobody dies on my watch. I think you were a firefighter, right?
I was,
probably have some similar stories rattling around. And you also know that you work on enough people that are in really bad shape, and you hand them off to somebody and they survive. That kind of reinforces that story, right?
Yeah, that's right.
We had heart attacks and broken ribs and cracked skulls and all these things. And you get these people out alive, and it reinforces that story that you can do this. You can save people, right? But then what do you do when someone says, "Don't save me"? That's a tougher spot to be in.
And especially when it's so close to your family, obviously.
Yeah. And so I went through the rest of that day and said, well, okay, my mom was a devout Catholic, so we brought in the priest to do the last sacrament for her, which didn't mean a lot to me, but it meant a lot to her. We towards the end of her life, my dad, they had this amazing relationship. We're together forever from the time they were kids, and he couldn't get close to her because of the rail on the hospital bed. And I couldn't figure the thing out. So I got the nurse over there, got her to drop the rail so my dad could get in bed and cuddle her. They had an oxygen mask on her, and my dad sort of looked at me and said, she doesn't like that. It's freaking her out. And so I went and talked to the nurse, said, well, what's that oxygen mask doing? She said, it'll extend her life 5 to 10 minutes. So get that thing off her face then, let's get her comfortable. And then at the moment of her death, there were 18 of us. We'd gotten cousins and uncles and aunts and nieces and nephews from all around the state had made it. There were 18 of us, and every person had a hand on her at the moment of her death, including myself. And I don't know if you've stood with someone at the moment of their death that you care about. I'm sure probably professionally you ended up having to, but my inclination anyway was to run from it. My inclination was to not experience this, was to go away. It was too much. I didn't want to deal with it. But I stood there with my hand on her right up to the moment of her death, staring her in the eyes and let her know I was there for her. And so I was able to look at that day and say, well, wait a second. I didn't just stand there and watch my mom die. I fought for my mom in every way I could while respecting her right to die her way.
Yeah.
So both those stories are true. We just stood there. We didn't fight for mom. We just stood there and watched her die. And I fought for my mom to die in every way and I fought for mom in every way I could while respecting her right to die her way. These are both true stories about that event. One of them was ruining my life and one of them serves me. And once I realized that we are in charge of this, we're writing these stories for ourselves. We're in control of the stories. We're making them up. Then it just set me free. So now you can look at any area of your life and say, what's my story about this? Is it true? And whether it's true or not, is it serving me? And if you take that active role in rewriting these stories that aren't serving you, you can really upcycle your outcomes very, very quickly.
Right. I see. So but with the book, it's really about forming people's lives by changing their story, because they could be telling a story that's not serving them. Right. That's
exactly right. It might not be a story like mine about the death of a loved one, but we have all these terrible stories about ourselves. Like, when you really think about the stories you tell yourself, like not the ones that you would, admit to, but the late night on the couch with a whiskey version of the stories. Right? These are not things you would ever say. You wouldn't stand up at a cocktail party and say, I'm fat and I'll never be in shape again. I'm terrible. I suck at life. I'm a bad dad. I'm a bad husband. I'm not successful. I'll never be successful. These are not things you'd say out loud, but we'll tell ourselves that all day long on the inside.
Yeah.
And we've never even taken the time usually to say those out loud or write them down and get them in the light of day and make a decision about whether that's a story we want to keep or not. So we're all kind of living our life, in this sort of unconscious way. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that's really what's happening with these stories. Until you bring them out in the light of day and make a decision about them, they're driving you somewhere. You just don't know where it is. It'd be as if you got in the car in the morning and turned it on, the GPS turned on and started giving you directions. You just followed it. You didn't stop and check the address, right?
No.
And in large part, we're all living our life that way. We're not stopping to check the address. So if we take the time to make these stories conscious, we can decide who we want to be, how we want to be, how we want to feel. So often in life, people reach a goal and they feel the same way. Maybe they lose the 100 pounds. They still have all the same body issues they had when they set out on that journey, because they did the physical work, but they didn't change the story they have about themselves inside. Right. And that story has all the power. You're running your day mostly on autopilot. Your brain is running about 80% on autopilot. You're only actively making about 20% of the decisions in your day. So to do that, we create all these really strong filters for the world. Story is powerful because it allows you to access the filter database, pull things out, change the filter. And if you don't change the filter, you don't change the outcomes.
Yes. Yeah. It's a bit like changing the fuel through in a car, a carburetor. Anyway, not everyone knows about it. Why do people tend to say bad stories or write bad stories about themselves?
So after I had that same question, and after realizing I had this bad story and starting to do the work to rewrite it, I wanted to figure out whether, was this just me? Does this work for me? Or am I onto something here? So I did a sort of a 2-year deep dive into the science and specifically the neuroscience of story and of happiness. And one of the things I discovered is that we're really hardwired out of the box to write bad stories. So, there were 15 other hominids roaming around back in the saber-toothed tiger days, and we're the ones that survived. And we didn't survive because we were the biggest or the toughest. We survived because we could cooperate and because we were the scariest. we developed a brain that was really good at hearing that twig crack in the woods and saying, that's the saber-toothed tiger, I better run. And now that a lot of us, not all of us, unfortunately, but the vast majority of us live our daily life without immediate threat to life, that mechanism isn't serving us any longer. So what it does is, if there's nothing immediately threatening your life, it then looks for negativity, and it compiles these negative bits of information to write our stories from. Right. And you're using an infinitesimally small amount of the data you have to write these stories to begin with. So as we talk, right now you're being bombarded with 11 million bits of information. And your conscious mind can take in 40 to 60 bits, depending on the study that you read, but none of them come up with more than 60 bits of sort of active engagement with information.
Yeah.
So you're filtering out almost all of the information coming at you. So now you're taking the smallest bit of information, your brain's hardwired to pick the worst bits of it and put your stories together from that, right? So we're sort of have this anthropological preset for negativity that serves us really poorly. So we have to take an active role in writing those stories. And we also have to take an active role in creating habits that pattern our world for the positive and help us pick out more positive bits of information. So as our brain is doing the sort of subconscious work of compiling these stories, it's got better information to work with, and we have a better chance of starting out with a better story to begin with.
Yeah. Well, you say some people, so take an active role to rewrite your stories. So what are some of the tools you use to rewrite your own story?
Yeah. So over the 2 years I was digging into this, the biggest thing that became clear is that these things are inside you and they've been inside you a long time and you didn't even know it. So the first step is really to, once you've done the pre-work of deciding, no, this story isn't true and it's not serving me and I'm in control of it. So you have to kind of make those 3 decisions up front. But once you've done that pre-work, then the first step is really to get it out of you. So you got to write it down. You got to make it real, but not inside of you.
Yeah.
So sit down with a pen and paper and write out your story. So you ask yourself those questions. Just look for a part of your life you're not happy with, someplace you're struggling, something you want to fix. You've got a bad story there. So ask yourself, what's my story about this? And then sit and write it out, preferably longhand, not on the computer. Do the active work of getting it out.
Yeah.
Then you look at that thing, and then you want to say it out loud. And a lot of people want to skip this step. It feels a little weird and uncomfortable. But saying it out loud will allow you to see and feel the emotional impact this thing's having on you. So I recommend you set up your cell phone and record yourself doing it. The first time you say it out loud, and then play that back, you'll see on your face, you'll wince, you'll cringe, you will actually feel the hard and the bad and the painful parts of that story. And you'll see it plain as day when you watch the recording. And I did this recently with my 7-year-old. He was struggling with distance learning because of COVID.
Yeah.
He loves school. He's a social butterfly kid.
Yeah.
And he came to me, he says, "Dad, I hate school." And you could just see all over this kid's face. I won't put up public videos of my kids on the internet. I'm that dad. So I won't show the video, but you just see all over his face. He was sad. He was depressed. And I said, "Great. Does that feel like that's who you are, that's making you feel good?" He says, "No, I'm feeling terrible." I said, let me show you. So I recorded it. I played it back for him. He said, "That's awful. I don't want to look like that, Dad." So we rewrote the story. And then we recorded him again and played it back for himself when he was lighter and happier. But he, even at 7 years old, could see on his face watching that story that it was killing him. It wasn't doing good things, and that he needed to rewrite it. So you write it down, then you say it out loud, preferably recording yourself so you can read it. And then you're just going to mark on that story that you wrote out every one of those places that's causing you pain. So like in my story, I'm failing you, I'm failing Anne. We checked those off. We didn't fight for Mom. We just stood there and watched her die and marked those off. And then, the other part of the story, she fought for all 5 of us every day of her life. I'm the youngest of 5 boys. That part didn't cause me pain. That was fine. So we didn't check that part off as needing to be rewritten. And then you rewrite it sort of one statement at a time. So, I started with, I'm failing you with my brother. Well, I'm not actually failing him. We weren't, the crux of the argument was he had just moved home after 20 years and we weren't spending much time together.
Right.
And that was because I was in the depths of this depression. I was a new dad. My first child was born about 41 days after my mom's death.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I'm not really failing him. We're just not getting to spend as much time together. And then I'm not failing my wife. So we can take that part of the story out. And then, we didn't fight for Mom. Well, we fought for Mom in every way we could while respecting her right to die her way. So you rewrite it piece by piece by piece, and you keep saying it out loud until it gets to the point where it feels better. This is really a feeling thing. So when you can say it out loud and it feels better, and it's a story you would tell somebody over drinks, or you would tell somebody at a cocktail party, it's something you would be willing to say out loud, then you're there, and you'll know, you'll feel it. So once you've gotten through that iterative rewriting process, then the work begins.
Right.
And so step 4 is to implant that new story in your subconscious. And that's the hard part. And up until now, the rest of this is actually pretty easy. None of this is rocket science, but this last bit takes work. 30 days minimum but like 60 to 90 days better. And you're going to tell that story to yourself at least twice a day. You're going to tell it to yourself before you go to bed and first thing when you wake up in the morning, at least.
Yeah.
Preferably, you're going to put it up somewhere, maybe on the mirror of the computer monitor where you see it. Will remind yourself, tell it to you in the middle of the day. And then the next step is incorporating it into your lived oral tradition. So actually telling the story to friends and family or whoever you feel safe with or whoever it's appropriate to. So after I rewrote my story, I would take friends out to drinks or dinner and be like, man, I just realized I was really depressed the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to say, especially for men. I didn't know I was depressed. Even once I figured it out, I didn't want to admit it. Even now, saying that out loud doesn't feel completely comfortable. There's a lot of stigma around men and depression, but
that's right. Yeah.
But doing that work, actually admitting to it and sharing that with the people you love is really going to help you give power to this new story. So I'd tell them I was depressed for the last couple of years. I had this bad story about my mom. Here's my new story. Here's what I realized. And by saying that story out loud over and over again and sharing it with my community, that did the work of making it so whenever I'm triggered about the day my mom died, it's that news story I fought for my mom in every way I could while respecting her right to die her way that pops up immediately. You can tell even with the speed at which I say it, it's now a part of me. And that old story doesn't come up anymore. Right. Now, if you do get triggered and that old story kind of rears its ugly head, that's just a reminder to go back and do the work. Start telling it to yourself, twice a day. Go out and tell people the story again. Do the work of getting it in there. But that I call that the story evolution process, because you're not writing a new story. You're not throwing out the old story. That story is a part of you. You're just evolving it into a story that serves you, from one that doesn't serve you into one that serves you.
Yes.
And the key is it has to still be true. Like in the case of my two stories, those are both true. They're based in true facts about that day.
Yeah.
You can't just batter away the negative with senseless positivity or things that aren't true. Even in the case of my son, when it came to distance learning, he said, I hate school. And we rewrote that story into, Zoom sucks, but it's still a chance to see my friends and teachers and learn. And I tried to take the Zoom sucks part out of the story at one point. And I said, hey, Grayson, how's that feel? Does that feel true? He says, oh, it doesn't feel true, Dad. Zoom sucks. And I was like, all right, that's the truth of it. So that's got to stay, but he balanced that with the positive of, I still get to see my teachers and friends and learn. So it still has to be true in the end for you.
Yes. Yeah. No, I can see that. Yeah. Well, as well as the 4 steps, there is also the 4 habits to create optimum neurochemical environment in the brain for happiness. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah. So in the research I did around happiness, it became really clear that we've got our definitions of happiness wrong, and we've got the steps to get there wrong. And what's funny about that is that we've known that for a long time. Like in the canon of positive psychology, cognitive behavioral psychology, all of this is known and has been known for a long time. It just hasn't worked its way into our sort of pop psychology lexicon. People still chase happiness as something that comes on the other side of some sort of achievement or goal or a someday thing. When I graduate high school, I'll be happy. When I get out of college, I'll be happy. When I get married, when I get the next promotion. And we're always chasing that. But as I used to tell people when we'd be packing to, used to be a mountain guide, when we'd be packing, I'd tell them, look, when we get to the top of the mountain, the only thing there is going to be what we brought with us. So make sure you have what you need in the bag, right? Make sure you've got your water, make sure you've got your gear. Life is the same way. When you get your PhD, the only thing that will be there is what you brought with you. There's nothing new there. When you get married, the only thing there is what you brought with you. And in that case, what your partner brought with them. But there's nothing new there. So if you can't feel it now, you're not going to feel it then. If you can't cultivate it now, it's not going to be there when you achieve that goal. And that's why this sort of hamster wheel goal achievement, process that we all have, at least in the Western world, it really doesn't serve us, because we sort of say, well, I'm going to feel it when I get there. And then you get there and you realize there's nothing there. The only thing left is to set another bigger, badder goal and get after it again and hope that it'll be there then. And so that is just a constant cycle of achievement without fulfillment, which, having been an entrepreneur now since 2005, I could tell you I've hit the achievement without fulfillment moment many, many times until I figured this out. And it's a terrible place to be. It's terrible to sort of get there and realize that it's not there. So then that begs the question, what really is happiness and how do you get it? So, the sort of most common definition that people agree to is eudaimonia, from the ancient Greeks, which is human flourishing, right? It's pretty good definition. You want to flourish. And it gets to this sense that we're not looking for this sort of, as my dad would say, this giggling idiot version of happiness. It's not about just being like giggly, happy, laughy every second of your life. That's not real, right? You know, I mean, we've all just been through a year of COVID. Nobody's going to be giggling there all the way through that, right?
No.
So we're talking about a resilient form of happiness, being able to be, comfortable and flourishing and still maintain that sort of resilient baseline of happiness through the struggles, of life. Life's not sort of an, up and to the right on the graph, hockey stick from worst to best. There's a lot of ups and downs. And so to get that resilient form of happiness, it turns out it's really better living through chemistry, not chemistry that you smoke or drink, but neurochemistry, right?
Yeah. Well, it does become neurochemistry after a while if you smoke and drink it, but yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, it certainly
different
can.
kind of, yeah.
So these core 4 habits are based on a synergistic effect of habits that will help you both enhance the natural checks and balances for happiness in your brain and dump a lot of happiness inducing chemicals into the brain. So the first one's getting 8 hours of sleep a night, which, I'm a dad. I've got a 7 and 3-year-old. I rarely get 8 hours sleep a night, but I do my best. But the reason everybody knows, you got to sleep to be healthy. But the reason this is important in a happiness context is because missing a night of sleep actually disconnects one of those checks and balances in the brain. You've got your amygdala, which is sort of that anger center of your brain. That's your buddy who's taken one too many Jaeger shots and is ready to punch somebody out at the bar at every moment, right?
Yeah.
That's your amygdala. And if he's just out there by himself, he's going to start a bar fight. And then you've got your medial prefrontal cortex, which is sort of your mild-mannered accountant buddy Chip, who pats him on the leg and says, "That guy's not so bad. Maybe we don't need to punch him right now," right?
Yeah, sure.
So if you miss 8 hours of sleep, Chip's not invited to the party. So it disconnects your medial prefrontal cortex from your amygdala. Yeah. And what they find is in the research that you have a 60% greater anger response to negative stimuli after missing a night of sleep.
Yeah.
So hard to hold the emotion of happiness and anger in your brain at the same time. Yeah. So if you're consistently missing sleep and you're consistently have this amped up anger response, it's real hard to cultivate happiness. And so getting 8 hours a night of sleep just keeps those checks and balances going in your brain to sort of keep that neutral baseline, which is important. If you're trying to get to a state of happiness, it's hard to start from that sort of depleted, place of anger. So that's why sleep is so important. And then 45 minutes of cardiovascular exercise is C2 in the core 4. And the reason exercise is so important is because it's a really powerful natural antidepressant.
Yeah.
So in the Duke Smile studies, they found, over 30 days, giving one group Zoloft and giving one group 30 to 45 minutes of cardiovascular exercise a day, both groups had equal rates of reduction in diagnoses of major depression over the course of 30 days. Yeah. So the exercise did just as good as the antidepressant without all the negative and scary side effects of it.
Yeah.
They also found the exercise group had 30% less recidivism rate back into major depression after the treatment. So the effect was longer lasting. Now, I like to be clear whenever I talk about this, that, if you're really suffering from depression or you're really having thoughts of harming yourself, going for a jog isn't going to cut it. You need to call and get help right now.
Yeah.
But for what's that?
No, I was saying that this is just for kind of like well-being as opposed to a treatment for something. You're just talking about maintaining good health, mental health.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
If you've got a case of the Mondays or the general pandemic blues, this will do the trick.
Yeah.
Doing it consistently to maintain your happiness level is where this is at. But if you're having an acute situation, get help right away.
Yeah.
And then we add in mindfulness meditation practice.
Yeah.
And you can start out with as little as 10 minutes a day on this. Just a 10-minute break for your brain will do wonders. And of course, we all know sort of, gives your brain a break. It gives you a sense of calmness and well-being. And that's all great. One of the things that people don't highlight often about meditation is that over time, consistently, they find it actually thins the tissue in the amygdala. So you've got that anger center of your brain, and that's a big, cluster, massive tissue. You get a negative stimuli, that all lights up, gets blood flow, gets electricity, and gets to going on being angry. Well, over time, consistent meditation will thin that tissue out, so you actually have less dense, less mass of tissue working on negative and angry stimuli over time. And so meditation consistently over time reduces your anger responses, which helps you be happier and more resilient, because you're not experiencing those sort of bipolar ups and downs of, anger and recovery, because you have less dense tissue working on anger. So meditation over the long haul is a really, really powerful tool for people.
Yeah.
As a side benefit, dementia and things are really on the rise for elderly people. And they find that people who are lifelong meditators have much, much lower rates of dementia in old age as well. So lots of benefits to meditation, but in a happiness context, it's really the work it's doing on the anger centers of the brain that helps you the most.
Yeah.
And then the final one is a daily gratitude practice. I'm sure you've heard this. I'm sure everybody's been told they need to be grateful. And I always, when I talk about this, feel a little bad because, we're always adding things to people's health to-do list. And people by now are like, get out of here. Like you need to eat kale shakes and fatty steaks and sleep 8 hours a night. And now I got to be grateful every time I stub my toe. But really, but I think what's getting lost with gratitude is, the practice of it is just to sit down once a day, preferably right before you go to sleep, and write down 3 things you're grateful for. Your brain actually sort of sorts and sifts and compiles your stories and cleans itself up while you sleep in REM sleep. And so giving it some better bits of information right before you go to sleep helps it with that process. But it's really the feeling of gratitude that matters. So when you write down those 3 things you're grateful for, you got to take some time to feel it. So if you're saying, I'm grateful for my son, or I'm grateful for my daughter, you got to take, at least 10 seconds, but better try to get up to 30 seconds or more, and actually just close your eyes, envision that person and feel it. Or if you're grateful for your healthy body, envision that and try to muster up that feeling of gratitude, and do that for each of those 3 things, because that feeling of gratitude is going to give you that sort of neurochemical bump of happiness for the gratitude practice. So the doing of the thing helps you pattern your world for the positive, helps you pick better bits of information. The feeling of it helps with that happiness, neurochemical environment in the brain. So I think when it moves from the realm of psychology to sort of, internet articles about how to get happy, that piece of taking the time to feel it gets lost in there. And that does a lot of the heavy lifting for your happiness. So I like to make sure people sort of know that's where the hard work is done. And when you put all 4 of those together, you're now tamping down your anger responses, ramping up, you're dumping, serotonin, oxytocin, and dopamine into your brain to create, which are all happiness inducing neurochemicals. To create the environment for this resilient happiness to move forward. And then when you take a hit, it's much easier to get back, right? Because you've got the right environment going. Yeah. But if everything's out of whack, if you're doing nothing to tune it up and you take a hit, then you just get slammed.
Yeah, that's understandable. So just to recap, the four habits are exercise, that goes without saying. Sleep, well, you said sleep first, actually. Sleep should be number 1, actually, because that will throw you out of sync even with your exercise and everything else for the day. So,
absolutely.
Meditation or mindfulness and gratitude. So those are the 4 areas of the 4 habits. That's great. So before we go, tell us more about where people can find your book and some of the work you do, because you're also a coach, aren't you?
Yeah. You can find the book on Amazon in all 3 formats: ebook, physical book, and audiobook, read by me. Just search Change Your Story, Change Your Life, Rich Curtis. Yeah. There are a couple other books by that name. So add the Rich Curtis in there. You'll find it. It's the, you can see it behind my head there. It's the yellow and blue one. Yeah. And then you can check me out at richcurtis.com, richcurtis.com. There we've got group coaching, individual private coaching, and then also sort of corporate work will come out and do and help you work, sort of from the top down at your company, the story level, to help you kind of reestablish your corporate culture if that's something you're needing to do. We're doing a lot of work with people in COVID recovery and helping people rewrite the stories from the pandemic a lot. Yeah, it sort of ramped up a lot of stress and anxiety and that sort of things in people, and written some new stories they're going to carry forward that might not serve them. So we're helping people kind of reestablish a baseline, rewrite their stories through coaching to move out of the pandemic, which hopefully we're doing shortly, and not have it be sort of a struggle or a pathology that continues on into their post-COVID life. So you can check all that out at richcurtis.com.
That's great. Well, Rich, it's been a great pleasure having you here and talking about this on my show today. You're doing some great work out there. And thanks very much for coming to speak to my audience today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dave. It was a great conversation. You have a great one.